Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to show you some stuff I would normally show you outside, except we've had super cold temperatures. There's about 18 inches of snow on the ground, and I'm not going to go out there and do anything right now. So I'm going to show you how to use a string line. We're talking about you might call it a mason's line, dry line, but it's a nylon twisted line. It's a lot stronger than a chalk line. The chalk line is in a reel. Chalk line is designed to leave a mark behind. This is not. This is just to register a straight line for you, and I'll show you some applications. I'm also going to show you the plumb bob. Now, I own a laser and levels, but occasionally you don't have a long enough level, your laser batteries die, and the plumb bob will work unless it's real windy. Also, I'm going to demonstrate some batter boards in this. This is a form stake that I'll use for batter boards. This one's not very long. Metal rod, sharpened to a point. It's got holes in it going in different directions so that you can put a screw or a nail through there, run a 2x4 across and make an H out of them. That's a batter board. That's something you can use to set up this string line, which would basically be set up somewhere where you're marking something like a fence in your yard. When we're starting a job, we don't have anything to register off of. We've got to put batter boards out to lay out the perimeter of the building so we can set our concrete forms. You might be doing a deck at your house and you need to lay out sonotube for pads for deck posts. This is the kind of application you'd use the string line for. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to start out with the 2x4 here. You can probably see it's got a little bit of a bow towards me. Now, if it's a short board, you can check it with a straight edge. This is an 8-foot level, and you can see there's a little gap there. If you put the level on the other side, you can see it's rocking on that board. So we know it's not straight. But if you have a level, that's great for a short board, but if it's longer than that, and you've got to do a 20-foot long wall, and you're trying to straighten that wall out, we're going to turn to our friend the string line. Now, there's a tendency to want to just hook the string on one end of the board, pull it to the other end of the board, and see how straight it is. The problem with that method is that you can see I've pulled my string down there, and it seems straight, but we know that this board isn't straight. And the problem is because the middle of the board is pushing the string out. Also, if you just hook the string on there, that knot will hold it away from the board. So you can also if you hook that loop on the back of the board on that screw, now the knot doesn't get in the way. But you still had the same problem here. We pull that string through, and it's up against the board, and it doesn't tell you that there's a problem. So you could think that it's straight when it's not. Now you can always check the other side of the board. So we'll hook it on this side, pull the string around the back, and as we pull it down this side, it's hard to see in this shot, but that string is loose. It's not touching the board. That shows the gap because of the bow of the board. To get around this, there's a way that we can set this string up so we don't have the same problem that we just saw there. Now I'm going to take this 2x4. I'm ripping it at 1.5 inches. That dimension is not necessarily important. It's important that this board is the same thickness over the whole length. By cutting all these pieces out of the same board, we can make sure that they should all match. So that's the board I just cut. That's the face I just ripped. And we know that it's the same thickness. So that thickness is the same as that, is the same as that, and that. And I'm using the table saw here only because my miter saw is not set up. Doesn't really matter. We're just cutting a few blocks that are the same thickness. The length of these blocks makes no difference. But that knot there is something I don't like, so I'm going to get rid of it. And here's my third piece. So now we have 3 2x4 blocks that should be 1.5 inches thick. And you can see, since they're all cut out of the same board, they're all flush. Now, if we go back to our board, we've got our spacer blocks. We're going to put this spacer block against the 2x4. And with the string wrapped around it, now the string will be parallel to the board, but not touching the board. So if we hook it on the back screw here, we'll pull it down the front. Now, instead of tying a knot around this screw that's hard to get out, let's look at a little trick. Pull your string till it's about close to the screw, double it back, and make about 4 or 5 twists. Hook it over the screw, and then pull back on the loose end. And when you pull it back again towards the screw, it will twist around itself and hold itself there. Then we can take our spacer block, tuck the spacer block in between the 2x4 and the string, and now the string is held 1.5 inches away from the board. When you're done, pull the block out, tug back on the string, and it loosens up. Now, if you're running a long length of string and you want to get it tighter, it doesn't work very well on this 8-foot length because there's not a lot of flex in this string, but you do that same knot, and before it's really tight, I'll take a nail. In this case, it's a nail set. I do a twist in there so that the string twists around it. Now you can use that as a handle to sort of pull it towards the screw, get it as snug as possible, and then let go. Keep your hand up because that thing will pop out of there and you don't want it to shoot you in the face. Now you pull back, tighten that string against itself, and it'll stay. Now we've got our spacer blocks. Can tuck one in here. You don't necessarily need the clamp. I'm putting the clamp on here just to keep it tight. You could use a screw to hold it in place. You could tack it in with a nail. If the string is tight, the string will hold it in place, so you won't have a problem with it. But now that I have the same space at each end of my 2x4, that means if the 2x4 is straight, I should have the same space in the middle. So this block should fit inside of the string if the board's straight. But it doesn't fit, which we sort of knew because we knew the board was bowed. So if I push it over, I can push the board straight and then my block fits in there. And then I know that it's parallel to the string and the board's in a straight line. And if this were the top of a wall plate or something like that, then I would use a brace to hold it in place. Now, if you don't want to use the blocks, you can always use 2 similar sized spacers and then use your tape measure, figure out what that distance is, and then you push or pull that board into position. And once you get it there, you pin it with a brace. The next thing we're going to show you with the string line is how to set up if you're out in the middle of space. That's your batter board. Those are your form stakes. I'm going to screw the form stake to the batter board at each end, and I'll put a screw in the top, and that's a place I can hook a string on. Now, if I were to set this in the ground, drive that in, I would usually add the board after the fact, and that creates a batter board out in space that we can hook this string line onto and pull to another batter board and find a line when we don't have any other reference points.
Okay, we're going to do a little pretending. Since it's been really cold for the last 3 weeks, it hasn't gotten above like 25 for the most part. We got about 18 inches of snow outside. I'm not going to do this and try to drive these stakes into the ground. So we're going to do it in here. We're going to pretend these two stakes are driven into the ground. This 2x right here is your batter board. Ideally, that batter board is level across here. That way, if you change the position of your string, it doesn't change your height in case you've got this set for height. So we've got our batter board here. It's driven into the ground, but the ground's down here. And I need to mark, and this string is pulled over to there. We might be using this for let's say you're setting a fence, you're putting in forms for your deck. If you're starting on a job site, you might be starting in the ground with nothing around. So you've got these batter boards set up to show you where the edges of a wall or the fence might be. So if we're trying to locate these, I've got a batter board set up here. I've established a line, whether it's off a property line or off of a building. Now what we need to do is transfer it down low. One way to do it would be to use a level, plumb down. Level might not be long enough. On a lot of these jobs, we're using these lasers. You can't always do that. Sometimes you run out of batteries. And this is an old school way to go. This is a good way to set forms, footers. I'll work with this, and you can use a plumb bob with it. So if I want to hang this plumb bob down, now barring any wind, this is going to hang perfectly plumb, and it won't get out of whack like a level might. So if I want to line up this 2x4 with this line, I want this to be just slightly above it, and this takes a little adjusting because you have to play with the weight of this. Now I want to hold this, and instead of trying to tie a knot here, there's a trick. You put your fingers past it, and you hook the string with your thumb, and you make a loop. I'll do a close-up of this. Then you take the other side of the string that's up over the top, and you pull that loop through. It's hard to do for the camera and get it right. So you have to play with it to get the height right. But then I'm able to move my 2x4 so that the edge is in line with it, and I know that right here I'm lined up, but now I need to check it over here. So what I can do is pinch the knot, slide it, move it to where I want. You make sure that this string isn't pulling you off to the side. And you'll notice as you go that the string gets lower and lower because there's more sag in it. So you have to adjust that as well. Now I can move this. If I hold that spot in the same spot, I can move it over, and I can continue to check along this string line with this plumb bob. And when I'm done, pull that string and it unties it. So there you have some tips to use a string line to help keep your work straight and maybe get some layout when you need to get some references before you get a job started. When you're working when there's no floor and no walls to measure off of. And hopefully that helps out a little bit. Please remember, like and subscribe. Put some comments in there. Tell me what you'd like to see. Share these videos. Any support's appreciated. Glad you could join us. Hope to see you next time. Thanks.